Hi, this is Reword Audio, and let's talk about center fill. So how to make the image appear strongly between your speakers, and it's kind of a very basic thing. That's the very first step basically on everyone's audio journey to have a center fill. That's the big difference between commercial audio gear and audiophile, quote-unquote audiophile gear, that instead of hearing things from one channel and then the other channel, so sound coming from here and sound coming from there, instead of that the sound comes everywhere. And this center fill things, it's kind of like a home theater-ish approach. I think home theater guys use this expression more to be able to hear the dialogue coming from the TV screen in the middle. But for audiophiles, it's more about having coherent image. So basically, instead of sound coming from one side and the other side, you have the musicians playing together. So maybe there's a singer here, a lady sings here, a guy plays a guitar there, there's a bass player here, and there's maybe a piano behind them. And then you can hear not just that there's a center fill, but that there's a lady here, and behind her there's a piano, and everyone has their own place, and not just left and right location, but you can also like hear in front, behind, or even height. So if you have a good loudspeaker, and not just loudspeaker, but loudspeaker room interface and amplifier loudspeaker interface, plus you need the source, because if the source cannot read that spatial information from the recording, it's not going to happen. And even worse, if that spatial image is not on the recording, then it won't happen either, and then you will hear something flat. And the best image, the most authentic sounding that comes from recordings that were recorded by a left microphone and the right microphone, and that captures the actual authentic image of the recording. So basically, the timing that each microphone gets, the time when the sound reaches the microphone, it is time correct, and then your loudspeakers can reproduce that for you. If an event was recorded by multiple mics, then what you are hearing is an artificial recreated space by the engineer. And if the engineer is skilled, they can recreate very stunning spaces, but they will be artificial spaces, not the space of the event. And this is not so obvious for many audiophiles, and that's because you need a really advanced system to hear the difference between a real acoustic space and an engineered acoustic space. So when you have a lower level audio gear, then the engineered acoustic spaces will pop out more. They will sound like, oh guys, this has really good imaging. I can really hear stuff here. And that's because the engineers put in a lot of effort to pop things out. That's why it seems to have better image, because like, wow, they did a great job. But when you have, and they do that to overcome the limitations of your system, their inability to recreate an authentic space, musical space. However, when you have a higher level system, then it's able to recreate actual musical spaces, then the two microphone recordings will be night and day, more authentic and credible, and it's just like unbelievable. You will reach a level when you only want to collect these recordings that were done with 2 channels, and everything will sound so gimmicky and so fake that you will just cry. But this video is really not about that, not about crying. I hope you guys will be smiling after that, but it's more about how to get that credible image. Wow, that would be a really long story. Now what I can focus on is how to have a feel of density for the performers, and it really depends on your loudspeaker and on your amplifier, how well they can feel the sound. It's kind of defined as center feel, but it's really the ability of a system to project dense sound and to recreate a mid bass at a good level, because it's a lot depends on the mid bass, and because when you place down the speakers, this distance between them that we have, like a 2 meters 3 meters distance, that's a distance that impacts mid bass reproduction a lot. And by fine tuning the distance, you can also fine tune the quality of the mid bass, and also whether you have a strong image, or that image if you are within the boundaries, the capability of your loudspeakers and amplifier combination, then you can push them further and further away, and reaches a point when you reach the capacity of your system and you cannot make them further away, because when you do that, then the sound falls apart. And it goes beyond the center image. The whole thing will just fall apart, and the mid bass will fall apart. Lots of things will start happening, and it's mainly dependent on your loudspeakers. However, if you change your amplifier, that can greatly affect how far you can push them from each other, how big an image you can, or sound stage you can project with them. And there are some amplifiers, like for example the Quicksilver triodes, which have an amazing capacity to throw a really big image. And however, it's mostly down to your loudspeakers and loudspeaker size. And what you can see behind me, these are the Mirages, and actually that's their optimal position. So this is where they can throw the biggest soundstage, but it's still coherent. And if you see on the side, you see the voice of Lancelots. They don't even fit in the camera angle. That's their optimal position. Actually, I could even pull them even further, but it's just my room is a little bit limited for that. Or yeah, it's just a room setting, because I want to have space for stuff on that side, and that's why I cannot pull them. But they have the ability to play even further from each other. And why is that? And that's because, look, there's one thing, which is the baffle width. So generally, the wider your front baffle, the better that system will be able to handle a bigger acoustic space. And that's because the wider front baffle will start to support upper bass and mid bass much better than these skinny front ends. So I do not like narrow front speakers. They have a much harder time to recreate a natural upper bass, natural mid bass and it will create more of a hi-fi, a leaner type of sound, which is very catchy, very showy, but it's not authentic. It sounds gimmicky to me. However, when you mate it with the right amplifier, that gimmickiness can be decreased a lot. And for example, when you go to very narrow loudspeakers, they have problems with the mid bass. And if you throw a solid state amplifier at them, that corrects that problem to a certain degree, because most solid state amplifiers, they bloat mid bass, they overboost it. The quantity of mid bass coming from solid state amps is more than the rest of the spectrum they reproduce, and when you throw it at a loudspeaker with a very narrow front, even narrower than my Mirage, this is like an older design. Nowadays we want designers use even more narrower fronts, then that's a really good combination and will give you a balanced sound. So what you see behind me, now these two pairs of speakers, I have smaller speakers, and if you remember my AOs, or for example, if you have bookshelf speakers, then the optimal placement in my room for them would be between the Mirages, like here. So that would be about like 1.6 meters, and then they can throw a really nice solid image. The Mirages are about 2 meters, and the walls are 3 meters, that's 10 feet apart. So when I sit in the couch, which is about 10 feet away, and they are 10 feet away as well from each other, so it seems that they are like really, really far away. But they really give a very coherent image, and so I think that that's what I wanted to say now, that generally the bigger your loudspeaker cabinet, the bigger the front, the bigger the driver, the bigger the free air volume, the bigger the sound stage you will get from them. And there's one more addition about the size of the soundstage, is that while the Mirages are like 2 meters from each other and the walls are 3 meters from each other, the walls do not give me like 50% bigger soundstage. They give like enormously larger soundstage, basically because they are omnidirectional loudspeakers, and they have no limit for imaging. So when I have a recording that's on normal speakers gives a really tiny image, for them the image is still huge. It's never becomes a Muppet show. It's still like real life-size people playing. But when I have some really big image that extends to my neighbor, to the room behind, extends to behind my ears, extends to the floor above, and sometimes if the recording is recorded in a way that you feel you are sitting in a balcony and looking at the orchestra below you playing, they have imaged it to the basement. So things like that can happen. And also they can image like from outside of the house, like really, really far away, like 10 meter off to the speaker. And that's partially because of the huge wide front baffle, large driver diameter, and omnidirectional method. So it uses the room to its advantage instead of fighting it. Yet, you will notice that despite the best effort and best system, you can still have issues with getting a correct image on certain recordings. One such is the Rush's Caress of Steel, and that's not because of your system. That's because this very recording was done with one channel out of phase record. They flipped the polarity on one channel after they mixed everything properly, correctly, and on the final down mix they flipped one channel out of phase, and the result of that is that actually I think why they did it, because I think the musicians were there at listening how does it sound before it got released. So when you flip the polarity on one channel compared to the other, then you create an artificial widening of the sound stage. So basically what I can hear on this recording is that the sound stage becomes wider. It's as if like there's more people playing, and there's like always we say like how come like Rush is just 3 guys, how can they make so much sound? That's why, because they use an extra trick to make the sound appear as if there's more players. And Neil Pearl's drumming is coming from the extreme sides of the room, so it's like half of his drum equipment is there, and he's a giant human being with 5-meter long arms and playing all over the room. And however, it sounds like really fake and gimmicky, and what's wrong with this recording when I put it on? And then I flipped the polarity on one channel to get the correct acoustic phase, and everything clicks together. Neil Peart appears here in the back playing the drums, and you can feel that the drums are in space arranged nicely, and you have a real life true drummer appearing. And then you have Gedali's bass, his voice, everything snaps in place. And there are more and more recordings like that when they flip one channel. It's not just early Rush, I mean this early Rush. Later Rush albums like Vapor Trails and others, they messed up the phase a lot on those, but that one you cannot flip, because it's not that one channel was out of phase, but one instrument. I think they put the drums out of phase compared to the rest. So if you are listening to it with your speakers in one polarity, then the vocal and the double bass, the bass will be right, sounding right, like it's played normally, and the drums will sound like kind of like no body to it, no weight. And then if you flip the polarity, then you have the weight behind the drums, but the voice and the bass, they will be like something wrong with them, like echoes or ghosts talking. And that's the only kind of recording when something, one instrument, was recorded out of phase. Then that recording is not for high fidelity purposes, because if your system is high fidelity, then it will show you that it's badly mastered, badly recorded, and you can't fix that. If it has a problem that one channel is out of phase, then you can flip it. If your system is such that you don't have a polarity switch on your amplifier or loudspeaker, then you manually have to change the negative and positive polarity of the cables that hook up your amplifier and loudspeakers, if you are bi-wiring or tri-wiring, or if you are using like 3 amps per channel with active amplification. Yeah, you have a lot of cable swapping to do. But what I do with all of my amps, I put on all of my amps the polarity switch, the phase switch, and then I can easily, it's not right, flip it. Yeah, it's good. So for me, this thing that one channel is flipped out of phase is not a biggie, because I flip it back. And if you think that it's such a unique that happened to the Rush album, now look at the Bach cantata, the Warner edition. they did the same thing. They flipped, Warner decided to flip one channel out of phase to have a more spectacular sound on CD that it's superior to vinyl, because on the original Teldec edition, Teldec telephone can, the phasing, the polarity for both channels was correct. They were done correctly. And now they come up with a CD version, digital version. Oh, it's superior to vinyl because it has a wider image, but it's just messed up. However, for me it's easy. Flip the polarity on the amplifier, and instead of hearing a gimmicky, showy sound with the instrument seemingly out of tune and tonality gone to whack, like instruments sound, especially like the brass, it sounds like the guy has a broken tuba, or what's happening. I can't even tell what kind of instrument is playing. And then you flip it. Oh, okay. Nothing is out of tune. It's just the out of phasing creates phasing artifacts. And now this issue is much worse than you thought if you are also looking at home theater. But that will be another episode, because I can see right there 002109, 21 minutes. So thank you guys for listening. Have an awesome day. Let's talk about home theater application and how does the channel flipping relate to that. Bye bye.